It's Kee Marcello from bloody Europe. How are you?
Yay! Thanks, Ollie. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Obviously the band wasn't called Bloody Europe, but this is an exciting time for me because I think the final countdown might be the biggest rock anthem in the world, and you, Kee, were part of the band, and you know, just a huge success that you are. And you also you know, you're a guitarist in your own right. You've got solo projects, you know, coming out your ass. You're doing absolutely everything at the moment, right? And it's a pleasure to have you here. I suppose my first question is gonna surround the final countdown. Are you sick of playing that song?
I get that a lot, but the thing is, I'm not, because you know, you can mirror in the eyes of the audience what's going on stage. You know,
Sure.
and every time I play that song, people go nuts.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So just because of that alone, it's worth playing it, because people just go crazy, and you can see in their eyes they get memories from that era and all kinds of weird shit that's going on. And no, I love it.
It's a song that has it's gone through sort of generations and generations. It's, you know, rock fans of 80s, 90s, noughties, you know, it kind of doesn't seem to die. Why do you think that song was so successful?
Well, I think first of all, it came out. The timing of the song was perfect because it was during the era of the Terminator movies and all that. You know,
Yes.
the dystopic future outlook was, you know, just breaking through in films and media and all that. And it is about leaving Earth because, you know, we're fucked here on Earth. We have to go somewhere else.
Of course.
I think that made it so anthem, like the lyrics, the contents of the lyrics, and also obviously that you know, the fanfare thing.
100%.
And everybody, you know, can sing it.
Yeah.
I don't know, you can sing it. You know, it's a real strong hook. And I think over the times, I think that's mainly what kept it sort of timeless, is that fanfare.
Yes.
You know, it kind of sticks to your mind. And it paints pictures in a way, you know. The title, Final Countdown, is actually, I think Joey took it from a really bad science fiction movie from the 50s.
Oh, okay.
You can Google later, The Final Countdown. I think Kirk Douglas was in it, if I'm not misinformed. Yeah.
Okay.
It's about a ship going into the Bermuda Triangle, you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It wasn't good.
What do you think, Kee, having been in arguably the biggest glam rock band in the world, could you tell me the most Spinal Tap moment of your career, if there is one?
Which one? They were constantly just pouring down.
Yeah.
So many, it's really hard to pick.
I guess, have you ever got lost backstage?
Oh, definitely.
Have you?
Thing, you know, it's definitely, it happens all the time. And I think
I love that actually happens. I love that happened in Spinal Tap. When you're sitting here telling me now, actually, yes, like that does happen
all the time. You know, we gotten lost numerous times right before showtime, and the audience is waiting, and we're, you know, trying to find our way through that maze that a particular stadium is. I remember one time we were actually trapped inside a hotel because the fans had surrounded the hotel, and they were sitting day and night, singing, you know, making campfires and singing Europe songs on acoustic guitar. And the hotel wanted to kick us out because all the tenants were complaining. All the guests were complaining they couldn't get in and out because it was blocked by those crazy fans.
Wow.
So getting out of there, going to the gig, we had to choose a different route. So somebody took us, this was in Italy, and somebody told us, you're gonna follow this guy, he's gonna take it to the backside, and we have a car there. So we went, and this is really Cleveland. We went down the cellar, down to the basement, through a restaurant. It was like a movie, through several empty rooms, and finally we're there. And now we're just waiting. We can see the car outside, it's glass windows. And now we're just waiting for him to open the door so we can get into the back of the car, in one of those that opens in the back, the van style car. That was just for as a transport for us. And then he didn't have the key.
No.
So we had to wait there for another half an hour before he came back with the key, and we jumped in to this van thing and took off. And by this time, the fans figured out that we went to the back side. I mean, it's not really rocket science. So they saw us in that car, trying to get into that car. So they surrounded the car. And to find the remedy to that, the driver just pressed the horn,
No.
constantly. And eventually it got stuck.
Oh, God. No.
It was perfect for the fans because in case there was someone who didn't know where we were, now everybody knew. So it was so Spinal Tap. It was us with a van and maybe 100 cars following us, all the way to the stadium. Stuff like that happen all the time.
That's
one day without a Spinal Tap moment.
So I guess tap is such a true reflection of how rock and roll really works.
Too real,
Is it a film that you kind of enjoy, or is it something that's a bit too close to home?
I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's absolutely amazing. I heard through the grapevine that some groups didn't enjoy it as much because it was too close to home.
I heard that.
Yeah. No, and then mentioning the names, but I think that was a fact.
No, mention names, Kee. You've got to mention.
I can't do it. I know them. So
when you kind of do interviews and guitar clinics, you're often referred to as the former guitarist for Europe, an Easy Action. Does the fact that you are often introduced as the former guitarist of Europe, does that kind of get boring after a while, or because you're no longer in the band, or would you rather be just introduced to something or somewhere as Kee Marcello because you are a guitarist in your own right?
Yeah, but it's really hard to compete with the career I had already. We sold we sold in excess of 25-30 million albums, and I really need a big solo success, like a huge hit. And I remember that, for instance, in the 70s, it took some while before Eric Clapton could find his own name. He needed a couple of hits below his belt before he was somebody else than the guy from Derek and the Dominos or Cream. So and I don't really have that, and I'm fine with that. The guy from Europe, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, to be fair, there are much worse titles out there, right?
Like asshole, scumbag.
Yeah. So Sweden, obviously you're from Sweden. It seems to birth some of the biggest and the best rock and metal bands out there, inclusive of Europe. Sabaton, Opeth, Meshuggah, Catatonia. Why do you think Sweden is so good at churning out these enormously successful heavy bands?
It's really, really hard question. Not to forget In Flames. That's a
yes.
Band. Yeah. And I have no answer to that. I mean, there's been talks about the Swedish music wonder, because we have the Max Martins and the songwriters of Sweden as well, which are ridiculously famous, and it doesn't really make sense if you consider it's only 10 million people in Sweden, and we have these amazing songwriters from Sweden out of this small country. So it's the same there. And ABBA, it's a phenomenon.
Of course.
It must be something in the milk. I don't know.
I reckon you guys are drinking stronger stuff than milk. My first introduction to your guitar playing, aside from Europe, was I watched some live footage of you a few years ago, of you playing the Flight of the Bumblebee in London in 1987, and
Oh, yeah.
I think it was fair to say that, you know, you kind of see that quite a lot in prog rock, you know, taking a lot of personality and sense of humor to the stage, but you didn't seem to just play it. You kind of just glided through it. You looked like you could have just done it with one hand. I mean, what kind of like made you decide at the height of 80s glam rock that playing Flight of the Bumblebee would work so well?
It's a good question. The thing is, when I joined the band and we started rehearsals for the Final Countdown World Tour, and they told me you need like a guitar feature,
Yeah.
a guitar solo when Joey gets to rest his voice and people get to hear something else than vocal songs, some instrumental stuff. They already had a keyboard intro, and Mick and Ian were doing Eine kleine Nachtmusik by Mozart.
Okay.
With drums and keyboards. Really cool, actually. So, and I thought it would be really cool to do like an amazing classical piece. I always listen to classical music, and for a while I was thinking Alla Turca by Beethoven,
Yeah. That'd be cool.
It's pretty cool. But then I thought, Flight of the Bumblebee, Rimsky fucking Korsakov. And this guy, I mean, he wanted to, it's onomatopoetic. He wanted to mimic a bumblebee in flight, And he really did it, I think, with this chromatic, psychotic scale he came up with. And I realized just how, and I told them, I'm going to do Flight of the Bumblebee. And they said something along the line of, you're fucking crazy. But I went back home and just started practicing, and for a while, I thought I was going to go completely insane, because if for the first like 2 months, nothing is happening.
Yeah.
It's like playing the piece for the first time every time you pick up the guitar. And I almost gave up a couple of times.
Oh, really?
But I had a deadline, and I'm really good with deadlines. If I have a deadline, I'm much better than if I don't. If I have all in the world, nothing happens. I tend to watch TV or smoke a cigar or but working against deadlines is a good thing for me. So I knew I had a couple of months left, and I was really practicing day and night just to nail those the alternate picking chromatic things, And once you got it, it's really hard to get rid of it.
Yeah.
I play to this day pretty much as I did then. A bit better, I would say, even. So it's back here now, muscle memory.
It was an amazing performance. When I kind of have studied your work and everything that you've done, I guess you have done so much throughout your career. And probably about 15, 20 years ago, we had the introduction of the internet. And music streaming sites and download sites, and when Lars Ulrich sued Napster, and we had all of that. Having gone through so many avenues with so many musical projects, and having been part of a band that sold 30 million records, do you think that the internet is helpful for aspiring musicians to get their music out there, or do you think that because we have major streaming sites, that in theory is the music industry slitting its own throat?
It's a big question. First of all, I think in the beginning, when it all happened by surprise to the music industry, to the record industry, I would say, it was really bad for the business, because, I mean, if they would have been if the music business would have been more intelligent, to be quite frank, they would have realized that this was going to happen sooner or later. But they refused to work together with digital companies, and so they didn't have a solution to present when all of a sudden all our music ended up on the internet for free for everybody to download. That was devastating for a lot of bands. That's Napster and those guys.
Yeah.
Pirate Bay and
Yeah.
but now it's a different thing altogether. I mean, I gotta say, and I'm involved in a company that works with Spotify. It's called Firefly Entertainment, which is doing really well. It's a label, and it's changed a lot over the years. And I can see the old dragons, like Kiss and melodic rock from the 80s and 90s, still have pretty bad Spotify counts. I'm sorry to say, but the new bands coming out, they're in the new game. They're aiming for playlists and all the different kind of methodology that goes around, trying to make it on Spotify. So I got great hopes for streaming. Actually, it's going to be good.
That's really interesting. I kind of thought just because of the longevity of your career, you have seen so many benefits of the music industry without the internet, but it's really refreshing, I suppose, to hear that, you think that it can actually be a positive.
But my own Spotify account sucks. I'm trying to do something about it, but it's hard.
But it is, isn't it? I mean, I think young bands, and I say young because the majority of aspiring bands are young, I think their journey begins so much more uphill than perhaps it did 30 years ago. You've got things like Instagram where you've got to look a certain way, and then you've got the playlist counts where you've got to have a certain amount of streams. And I suppose, when you were, gigging in Easy Action and Europe, that stuff didn't matter. It was, I mean, obviously you guys had an amazing image anyway, but you didn't have things like Instagram and, I don't know if you had image consultants, but it all seemed much more natural than perhaps it is today.
Yeah, I don't know really. It's really hard to compare the past with what's happening right now because so much has changed. But I remember one thing that I don't miss at all, because often I'm frequently asked the question, is it harder to break through with a band today than it was in the 80s?
Yes.
It's really impossible to answer, but let me do a comparison. What we had to do in the early 80s, we had to record a demo, and hiring a studio was just beyond anybody's economy.
Yes.
Fortune. Just to have an engineer, and without an engineer, it was impossible. Who knew how to run a studio? I surely didn't, and nobody else did either. So what we did, what a lot of bands did, they did like favors and counter favors. I put guitars on tracks, and you get like 2 hours free in the studio with an engineer.
Okay.
Try to get a demo together. You mix down the demo on a cassette, and then you gave it to a label, and they could, most of the time, they just went, no.
Yeah, it's soul destroying, isn't it?
It was like treading in quicksand in a lot of ways. The positive thing with today is that you can actually make a demo in a home studio just with a laptop.
Yeah.
Really, easy, and with a pretty good sound quality.
Yes.
And you can put it on Spotify yourself, or you can contact the label and show it to them. So it's easier to get out there. It's easier to put up your own YouTube channel and start promoting your own music in that way. So I don't know which one is better, to be quite frank, and it's hard to compare.
It's like being stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? Because when you talk about the past, I guess hindsight, you always kind of reflect, a bit more kind of positively. Oh yeah, it was better, when we were younger and blah, blah, blah. But things are generally better because you're younger and because you're kind of more positive. But with regards to your career and where you're going, having sold so many millions of records, having toured the world hundreds of times, what is next for you? Because it can't get any better.
I know. It goes downhill from here.
Yeah. So when are you going to retire? No, I'm joking.
Say goodbye to the future.
Yeah.
The thing is,
but where can it go?
It's definitely, that avenue is definitely getting more and more narrower, as time goes.
Really?
But I still really enjoy doing crazy gigs, like playing in India and playing in unusual places, so to speak. That's
Yeah.
cool. I played in India a couple of years ago in Nagaland. It's up in the northeast of India, and it was like visiting a different planet, man. It was
Wow.
completely different, you know. And we went up with a Jeep, sort of Suzuki Jeep, not a real Jeep,
Yeah.
small, you know, and it was like people were overtaking and double and triple overtaking, and it wasn't even a road. It was mud and no fences. You can look 2,000 meters on the right-hand side all the way. I've never been so scared. But well up there, it was a great festival, and you know, the hotel had a huge billboard with me on it, you know, with a guitar.
Wow.
It was like being back in the 1920s.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible.
And we got, you know, after the festival gig, we got invited with a guy that was actually in the Indian government, and loads of politicians in a palace, and I met sultans, and you know, it's really wild, you know, what happens if you go to unusual places in the world, you know. Pretty much the same thing happened when I played in Kosovo. That's another place that you don't go to every day.
Of course.
It's a little bit easty,
Right.
anyway. But the people are just starving for music. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
And I did a clinic when I was in India, which was very interesting, because after the clinic, I saw some guys, really young guys, maybe in their early teens, standing around with sort of manga style hairdos, you know, manga hairstyles, and they were looking at me. So I approached them and said, "Hi guys," and they were really nervous. And we, you know, I greeted them and they said, "Hi, congratulations very much to the superstitious." Oh, okay. So I was, you know, I reckon they meant the Superstitious song.
Yeah.
It's one of my most well-known solos in it. So I said, "Whoa, yeah, thanks a lot. So you guys are Europe fans?" And they looked at me and then at each other, and they heard of Europe, because the thing is, the Superstitious, it's a meme. It's just a solo, and they sent it to each other. And a lot of guitar players in India or in Southeast Asia in general apparently work this way. They have memes. One is the Superstitious, my solo on the
Okay.
Another one is the theme from Top Gun, weirdly enough, which is it's a brilliant guitar player playing it. The guy who plays with Billy Idol, Steve Stevens, is playing that thing, and loads of other things, but it's just memes. So it was really weird. They knew my solo really well. They could play it, all of them, you know.
But didn't know the song.
But they didn't know the song or the band.
That's mad. That's incredible. Where? Go on.
No, it's sort of backward in a way. You know, you learn the guitar solo. Oh, it's a band too. I was wondering where the bass came from.
That's incredible. So, having, you know, as we've said, having sort of toured the world, having probably met all your idols and signed various, you know, autographs and recorded on hundreds and thousands of tracks, what would your advice be to either a band, a guitarist, or even just a musician listening to this and thinking, my God, I would love a career in music with the longevity and the success that Kee Marcello has had? What would you say to them? Apart from join Europe, because they can't.
But the trick is, don't give up. You know, when I started playing the guitar in the mid '70s, pretty much everybody I idolized in the small town where I came from, they gave up. I was the only one that persisted through the bullshit, and actually, because I didn't have a plan B. I knew exactly what I wanted to do since I was 13. I knew exactly that I wanted to be a rock star. That was it. It wasn't a plan B at all. So I just went for that and took whatever shit job I had to do at the moment to pay for rent.
Yeah.
So I could do what I wanted to do. You know, sleep wasn't important either. You know, I
No.
sat up rehearsing. So I think it's determination is the simple answer. And, you know, don't give up. And don't care what anybody says. People are shit. And anyway, 95% everybody on this earth are completely stupid. Don't them, including me. Don't listen to anybody. Follow your voice.
That's amazing. I have to say that I heard your some of your playing on Darby Todd's album, who we interviewed a couple of weeks ago, and it was just phenomenal. It really was. And I know that we've made jokes about, you know, you retiring and stuff like that, but honestly, your playing is just phenomenal. And I've read so many articles where people have said you are one of the best guitarists in the world. That must be such a compliment when you hear things like that.
Oh, that's amazing. Absolutely. And I should probably say something humble here, but that's always been my plan. I mean, that's the reason I was doing this from the start. I just wanted, you know, maybe not the best, but up there in the top for sure, you know. And during my journey, I met a lot of the other ones, so to speak, played with them, and that's amazing. Also, I mean, when you can feel that you learn a lot of other people that are in the same situation and all that. That's another tip I want to give to all musicians out there: play with friends. You know, if you're a guitar player, don't see the other guitar players as competition. See them as a friend that you can jam with and trade solos.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from other guitar players just by hanging and playing. I played with Phil Collin from Def Leppard. We used to jam when we did a tour together. With Paul Gilbert and from Mr. Big and loads and loads of other players that I encountered over time. You know, I always like to jam. You know, because you learn something. So it's the best way. Don't sit alone in front of your camera and you don't download background from the internet. Meet people and play with them. That's how you get this shit down.
Amazing. And Kee, if people want to come and see you live, where can they find out about you?
But right now it's a bit hard because of the COVID rules and all that.
Yes.
It's lighting up though a little bit. For instance, in the EU, which you no longer are part of. I'm sorry.
Hey, that wasn't my decision. I've that was when that was announced. I was not a happy boy, I can assure you.
Yeah. Oh, I feel sorry for you guys. It was just a sign of the times, wasn't it? You know, Trump won the election, and some really scary right wings were blowing at the time. The thing is, 29th of September, I believe it is, it's opening up in the big parts of Europe, and you can actually travel around. But it's a big step left. Will the people actually have the guts to buy the tickets and stand there among all the others in a festival? That remains to be seen.
Yeah.
People are going to be scared in the beginning, because even though you have your 2 vaccination shots, you can still get it. Not as bad from what I heard, but you can still get it.
Yes.
And this is what the promoters right now are afraid of, that they're going to put on a big festival and nobody would buy tickets. So we still have a way to go. I think
people will. You know, I'm pretty confident that live music is such an enormous part of so many people's lives. You know, not only the people attending, but the band playing, the crew, the venue hosts. You know, everybody just loves live performance. And but hopefully you'll come over to the sunny UK soon, and you know, we can see you live.
Sunny UK was an overstatement. It's fucking raining.
Yeah. Yeah, admittedly, but I was trying to make it sound more attractive, so you'd come over and, you know, we could go for some beers. But no, Kee Marcello.
But absolutely, I want to come over. I love playing in England. I mean, after all, it's the mega center of rock and roll, really, and all my heroes come from Britain.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You know, Clapton, Jeff Beck,
Jeff
and
Beck,
all the others I was talking about. You
let
know,
me. I would like to share a very quick rock and roll story with you, if I may.
yeah.
Talking of Jeff Beck, so my granddad used to own a pub in the middle of nowhere in a place called Tunbridge Wells, right? And all the rock stars in the 70s used to go there because they wouldn't be approached by the paparazzi. So this was
Wow.
people like Jimmy Page, Richie Blackmore, Jeff Beck.
Like,
And my dad worked at the pub with my granddad, and he was pulling pints for Jeff Beck and things like that. And Jeff Beck now lives next door to my aunt and uncle.
oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And if you, I mean, obviously, it's got a lot of land, but at night, if you're really quiet, you can hear him play. So basically, every time I go and see my aunt and uncle, I get a free Jeff Beck gig. So that's good, um, which is cool.
That's amazing. That's not bad.
That's yeah, it's pretty good. But
Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate it, and I definitely hope that we can hang out soon.
Great. Thanks, Ollie. Thanks for having
you.
me. And I hope to answer your question, which I don't think I did. I hope the beginning of next year, you know, we're releasing the Out of This World album. We have a project called Out of This World
Nice.
with Tommy Hart from Fair Warning singing lead vocals, and Darby is doing the drums. And
Oh, cool.
it was released in Japan this spring, and it was #1 on the sales charts for months. It was, you know, it was
Wow.
top for the bigger part of the spring and summer. So we're definitely going to go to Japan. But from the reports I've had so far, they're not going to allow anybody, any foreigners, into the country touring yet. I mean,
Right.
domestic artists can tour today in Japan. This is going to take until after New Year's before we can do a Japanese tour. And we definitely want to come to the UK.
I'd love to
Darby
see
will
it.
find a way.
Yeah, yeah, he will. He'll get you in. He'll get you in. Thank you so much.